Give me your best shot, One-Eyed Willie.
As one of the most unconventional superheroes in the entire Marvel Universe, Wade Wilson has been the topic of discussion. His ability to break the fourth wall and speak to us fans makes it very evident that this guy is a bit different. Other than being the most aware of the readers amongst heroes, the Merc with a Mouth can also boast a rather mysterious set of abilities. We just can't be sure where he gets his powers from, and that's what makes today's video so interesting. Over the years, fans have debated time and time again if Deadpool is a mutant or not. Well, today we'll go through all the evidence at our disposal and determine if Deadpool can finally join the X-Men team or not. So put on your Sherlock hats and get out your magnifying glasses. We're about to solve an epic mystery. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Did I say this was a love story? No. It's a horror movie.
What is mutation? Before we tackle the big question, it's imperative for us to understand what mutation is when it comes to the Marvel Universe. I mean, we all know what mutation is when it comes to basic biology, right? Well, it's a complicated concept which can be hard to understand if we delve into the nitty-gritty of it. But if we put it into simple terms, then we can say that mutation is the change that occurs in DNA. These changes happen on a nucleotide basis. Now, what's a nucleotide? It's what makes up the DNA sequence, the building blocks of DNA, if you want to put it that way. If one single nucleotide changes in a long DNA code, we have what is called a point mutation. If one segment of DNA gets copied, then that's a duplication. Obviously, any fan of Jurassic Park knows about insertion and deletion in DNA mutation, because that's what John Hammond and his team of scientists did. They finished the dinosaur DNA code by adding DNA of frogs or other animals they could find that would match up. Before you start thinking that you accidentally came across a biology video instead of a comic book video, let me assure you, you're not watching the wrong one. So let's get to the mutation and what we understand about it in the X-Men universe. In the X-Men universe, the mutants, scientific name Homo superior, end up this way because they have a gene on their 23rd chromosome. The 23rd chromosome is, as you know, the X and Y genes. Now, out of those two, the X gene is the mutator gene. Basically, the genetic material of the X chromosome, when it gets changed, becomes the X gene, which leads to everything. If I had to guess from my limited knowledge about DNA, I would say that the presence of X gene is caused by a point mutation. Like a small nucleotide of the X chromosome went bleep and bam, we have the X gene, the one that gives you superpowers. We also have accounts that mention that the mutant genome is not X gene, but the X factor chromosome. What's the difference, you ask? Well, if the chromosome is a bookshelf, then the gene is the books that fill it up. So, okay, we have a special gene or a chromosome, but then what happens? This gene remains dormant until it's activated, and once it's activated, it starts following the basic rules of central dogma. Through transcription and translation of the genetic code, this gene produces a protein that's not quite like ours. Now, our entire body runs on protein, and when this tiny little exotic protein is created, a huge chain reaction begins. This protein triggers the chemical signals in the body of the host, which leads to the mutation of the other genes, and voila, we have a mutant. For most of the mutants, we see that this activation occurs in puberty. I say most in a very statistical way. I'm not saying that 9 out of 10 mutants will go through the activation when they're going through puberty. What I am saying is that in the vast world of the Marvel Universe, where there are thousands and thousands of mutants, the ones whose changes were recorded, most of them showed the activation at this age. This activation is caused by some sort of trigger. Now, these triggers can be due to stress, fear, starvation, emotional trauma, or sometimes they happen naturally. But in some special cases, if the stress is a lot and the body is mutated enough, internally a secondary mutation occurs, like Emma Frost's diamond skin. However, there are some cases where mutants end up being activated when they're born. These mutants include the Homo Killcrop, better known as changelings. Most of these mutants have a really hard time accepting their powers, and rightfully so. Imagine you're a child and you keep hurting your loved ones with your powers without even intending to. That's a recipe for disaster. Now that there are mutants, one might wonder, where did the mutations come from? Is it something that happens naturally, or is there something else at play? Well, you would be right to think that there are some other things at play. Solar radiation was considered to be the main root cause for the drastic rise in mutant birth rates. And then, as days went by, we saw that it's not just solar radiation that can cause mutations. Direct radiation of any kind can lead to development or activation of the mutant genes. Even beta particles, which are not as strong as gamma rays, can activate the mutant gene. If the X gene can be triggered by so many things, there have to be things that inhibit it, right? I mean, the world is always running on balance. Everything has an equal and opposite version, no? Well, for the sake of inhibition, there are two cases that we can talk about. For one, we have Rhapsody, who got a serious case of meningitis when she was young. This meningitis somehow managed to slow down the activation of her X gene until she was in her late teens or early 20s. And for number 2, we have our very own boy, Peter Parker. No, not the Peter Parker from Earth 616. I'm talking about Peter Parker from Earth 13270. Here, Peter Parker possesses the powers of a mutant. However, when he was bitten by the radioactive spider, which turned him into Spider-Man, that caused some changes in his DNA, right? Now, the mutations of the radioactive spider bite and the X gene did not go hand in hand. That's why when he was young and going through puberty, he had spider powers, but after he lost the powers from the bite, his X gene took over, and he got a fresh set of powers, or so it's implied. His mutant powers are actually yet to be shown. Since we're talking about the mutant powers, let me tell you about how the powers from mutant genes come to show up. So, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that these gene mutations are not being done to help the individual. The mutations are being done to the DNA because of nature. So, what power one gets from the mutation is completely dependent on how the mutation works out. Sometimes, mutations can be pretty simple, like Jazz getting blue skin, or you can get complicated mutations which make you super powerful, like being psychic or precognitive or telepathic. However, it's to be noted that these precognitive, telepathic mutants, despite their significantly huge numbers in the story arcs, are actually one of the rarest powers to get from the mutation. The more common mutant power or ability has to be the animalistic mutation, which we see in the case of Sabretooth. When you have so many changes happening in your body, surely that affects your personality, right? Well, Dr. Lucius Kleinstein was the first one who stated that there is a correlation between the two. For example, we see Match, who's literally a glowing ball of flame. And you know what? He's rather short-tempered, despite his leadership acumen. So we could say that he got his fiery personality because of his fiery mutation. As fans, you might feel like the telekinetics are always rather cocky. This could also be chalked up to their power being the dictator of their personality, because who wouldn't be cocky if they always knew exactly what others were thinking? Obviously, you can understand just how many powers there are in the Marvel Universe that are yet to be explored. Out of those powers, psionic abilities are the most fine-tuned talents usually. They're the first ones to get affected whenever there are mutants with inhibitory powers around. I suppose that's a way to knock the telepaths down a peg. Now, with all this information, you can understand just how crucial this X gene mutation is when it comes to classifying a mutant. So with that being said, it's time to tackle the greatest question. Is Deadpool a mutant or not? Let's first talk about why is Deadpool not a mutant? Coming to Deadpool finally, we have to say, this man is the most unpredictable character in the entire Marvel Universe. He's simply not someone you can put your finger on. Perhaps that's why when you look at the Merc with a Mouth's origin, you cannot be sure if he's a mutant or not. See, when you compare Wade Wilson's origins with others, we'll see that he really does not classify as a mutant. Captain America, Hulk, and many other superheroes we know about did not get their powers naturally. It was not genetic. These heroes ended up receiving radiation that would trigger their genes to mutate from outside. Yes, while I admit that their genes did mutate, but these mutations were not natural. It's not like their body already had a code ready to go when it was time to create changes in their system. The outside interference is what caused the mutations to be triggered, and that makes them mutate, not a mutant. See, Wade Wilson was experimented upon by the Weapon Plus program. You would know that there are 2 more people who got experimented on by the same program. We got Captain America and Wolverine. Now, here's the thing, right? Wolverine was already a superhuman before he went through the experimentation. He did not need to be experimented upon to gain his super abilities. He already had a few of those with him. The experiment simply took his powers up a notch and turned him into a killing machine. While in the case of Steve Rogers, we had a human who was turned into a superhuman by experimentation. In the Wolverine and Captain America Weapon Plus Issue 1, we get to have some clarity on this topic. We learn that the Weapon Plus program is a program that ran for generations. Captain America was Weapon 1, while Wolverine was Weapon X. On a chalkboard, we see a list of many other test subjects who were part of this project. And who do we see on that list? That's right, Wade Wilson. He was there marked as Weapon 9, which means that Wade's powers may have been created and not activated like we were thinking. But then again, that did not stop the Deadpool fans from thinking he's a mutant. I mean, the guy is always in a close relationship with mutants, and he's an interesting character. The fans feel for him, and so of course, if they want, they can club Deadpool with the mutants. You might be thinking that Wade's healing powers are what makes him count as a mutant. I mean, if he's a human, how can he have these superhuman healing abilities, right? I mean, I don't blame you for thinking that. See, Steve Rogers and Hulk, both of them are super strong heroes, right? It's not easy to defeat either of them because of just how unstoppable they are, right? But tell me something, were they able to heal themselves before they got their superhuman abilities? They were not. It was because of the mutations they went through that gave them the power to heal themselves that way. Now I know, you all want me to talk about the first issue of Deadpool and Death Annual. For those who may not know, this is the first time we see Wade with his healing abilities. Here, Wade and Death meet for the first time when Wade was at the Department K medical facility, undergoing treatments which would eventually turn him into Deadpool. The experiments happened, and with the stress from the experiments and the aggressive cancer, Deadpool is almost dying. But when Death came, Death found Wade with a new healing ability, which made it difficult for death to kill him, as you can imagine. Then in the 60th issue of Deadpool, his healing factors are taken away by Weapon Plus, and he's killed. Although it's true that he was brought back to life by the Mad Titan Thanos, who cursed him to be immortal, Wade is simply not a mutant. His powers, whichever they may be, all came due to experimentation. So he's a mutate, right? Well, it's not that simple. This is the argument you might have to explain why Wade is not a mutant. But things changed when the 32nd issue of X-Force came out. Why he is a mutant, officially confirmed. That's right, boys. Our merc with a mouth is finally and officially a mutant. But how did we get here? Well, let me tell you. In the comic book story arc that we're following, Krakoa is under attack. Who are they fighting, you ask? Why, they're the Eternals. Yes, the Angelina Jolie one. The Eternals, as you would know if you watched the movie, are not so nice. I mean, I personally think they have a very holier-than-thou attitude, but it could just be me. Let me know if you guys agree, yeah? So anyway, as I was saying, the Eternals think that the X-Men are not correct. Yep, they think that the X-Men represent something known as excess deviation, and they need to be put on the right path. So they attacked Krakoa. Obviously, the X-Men are not going to sit there and just take it, so they engage in battle. While the X-Men are defending their home from the Eternals, there were other threats who were desperate to get their hands on the X-Men. And by other threats, I mean Kraven the Hunter. He felt like it was absolutely unfair and ridiculous that the mutants were able to repeatedly create new bodies for themselves after the national secret of Krakoa became public knowledge. So this man hunted down Deadpool and decided to invade Krakoa himself, using the merc with a mouth's head as a key. Kraven entered the hatchery, where all the new bodies were being made by the mutants. He saw the bodies and decided that he should kill them all because there was no reason why mutants should get this privilege when he could not. While he was busy slicing the egg-like shells open and stabbing the bodies, Wade managed to bite off his tongue. He knew that eventually his mutant friends would find the severed tongue when they came to check the hatchery, and they would send someone for him. Turns out he was right. Eventually, his severed tongue was found and reported to Beast, which led to Beast asking Black Tom to stay on the lookout for Deadpool. Kraven was on the hunt for the best of the best among the mutants, and in his quest, he eventually dropped off Deadpool's severed head. This allows Tom Cassidy to find Deadpool and give him a new body made out of plants for the time being, so that he could join in on the fight for now. Now, this body that Tom gave him definitely contains the X gene because, well, it's made by someone with an X gene. So that means Deadpool is finally the proud owner of the X gene, which makes him a mutant. And now he has one more thing in common with his idol Wolverine. So I suppose, in a way, you can look at this issue and consider this as the official confirmation of him being a mutant. But that doesn't mean he'll have a better life though, because let's be real. Under the dire circumstances in which he got this body, he definitely cannot enjoy the mutant privileges. There is far too much at stake right now. When we look at the movies, you might feel like Wade is a mutant. Why? Because in the movies, his healing abilities were not a result of experimentation. His healing powers were always there. They were simply dormant, and all the changes in his life triggered his body to start up that power. So in a way, he is a mutant. Over the years, Wade's relationship with the X-Men has grown quite a bit. At first, whenever Wade calls himself a mutant, most of the X-Men would feel irritated by that because he is not. His healing abilities in the comics came from the Weapon Plus program. However, as days have gone by and the Merc has proven himself to be a strong ally of the X-Men, the mutants have become less insistent on correcting Wade whenever he calls himself a mutant. I mean, come on guys. Wade literally put on the X-Men costume when he was helping the X-Men in the 8th issue of Cable and Deadpool. So him being a part of the team was inevitable. Honestly, in my opinion, given how vastly Wade's body has mutated over the years, at this point one could just call him a mutant like the rest of the X-Men. It would only be fair. Marvelous verdict. With that, guys, we come to the end of our video. What's your opinion when it comes to this question? Do you think Wade is a mutant or not? I'm personally very glad that Deadpool finally gets the X-Men team rep. He's always shown a lot of passion for joining this team, and honestly, if Logan can, why can't he? I think the X-Men team could use someone as fun-loving and unhinged as Wade. And if you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
That never happened. Let's go home, Russell.